Welcome to the Weave Your Magical World podcast. I have a super amazing guest for you, a friend of mine from London. Her name is Amy Slevin. Yay! Hello, Amy.
Hi.
And Amy is going to be talking to us about pain and some things that I think a lot of people don't realize about pain. So I'll introduce her and then we'll kind of go into that a little bit. And then she's going to tell us a little bit about her background and how she got into that. So, Amy, you're a qualified osteopath. You are an amazing yoga teacher. I've done your yoga classes and they are amazing and a lot of fun. Oh, stop. And now you're focusing on mindset and helping people recover from chronic pain, debilitating pain, and pain that they've not been able to move through, even though often they've actually recovered from the injury.
Yeah, those ones are the most frustrating because generally speaking, most injuries heal within about 3 months. There are exceptions, of course, but like the vast majority of injuries do heal within 3 months. But sometimes the nervous system has a memory of what happened or a memory of the injury. And so that's sometimes why pain lingers, but there's a whole bunch of reasons why, but that's generally not in a nutshell, like what happens.
Okay, cool. All right. So that is super fascinating to me, and I think it's going to be quite eye-opening to a lot of people, because if you're dealing with pain, then that just completely inhibits your life. And so I know that you have dealt with pain, and I don't know exactly in what ways, but I know that it's something that you have recovered from. And so this podcast is obviously about weaving your magical world. And I know that it's a very difficult thing to do, is to weave your magical world when you're constantly distracted by something that's massively in pain. So how have you managed to expand your world, weave your magical world, change things because you've managed to move through this yourself?
Okay, I love this, right? Because basically, so often pain is like a messenger. And so it's not so much that we are able to do stuff in spite of having pain, but it's because we have pain that we're able to do stuff. And what I mean by that is, so for example, let's just get straight to the examples, no messing around.
I love it.
I'm going to go to, yeah. Okay, so I had a knee injury that lasted for about 4.5 years. And at first it was like not that bad and I could do most of the stuff that I wanted to do, but it did after a while get really annoying and I couldn't do stuff. And in fact, I remember you were staying in my house at the time and you said to me, instead of sending it some hate and being angry with it, why don't you try sending it some love? And I was like, oh, fuck off, hippie. And then I thought, you know what, let's not be such a disparaging bitch and let's try that. And weirdly enough, I did, and it kind of was quite soothing. Like my knee pain got a little bit better because I was like, okay, let's just try a different approach here, because obviously being angry with it was not helping. And then I did this other, I did lots of things, right? But the whole thing about weaving an amazing, wonderful life and experience as a result of pain and as a result of injury was if you start to listen to the message that it's trying to give you. And for me, God, the messages are like 1,000-fold. So one of the messages, the main ones at the time, so I had this dog, and I think you probably remember the dog because you very beautifully, kindly looked after him sometimes for me.
Jackson.
A lot.
Jackson?
Yay! Yes. As Jackson, right.
He was high maintenance.
He was high maintenance, right? And for a single mom, it was a lot of hard work. And I think I just underestimated how much my work was demanding of me. And I also underestimated how much he would be demanding. And so I was very much caught between the work and the dog. And then I had so much guilt. I was like leaving the dog by himself so much. But then when I went walking with him, he'd be pulling me a lot, or he would, just be like quite hard work to walk. And he was big, right? He's like half Rhodesian Ridgeback and half Labrador. Anyway, so there was like this like literal tug of war between me and him. And it was like tweaking and talking my knee every time I would take a step with him. And it was just like, oh my God. And I was in agony, like walking the dog. And I just had all this stuff. So anyway, so that was the dog. And then I also had this kind of therapist sort of person that I was working with, and I wasn't loving the process. And I kind of had a sense that it was doing me some good. And my dad, who also is familiar with the process, every time I saw my dad, he'd be like, so how's it going with the therapist? And I was like, I hate it, Father, but it's actually, you know, it's going quite well, but I don't really enjoy the whole process. And my dad was like, no, but can't you see how much it's helped you? It's really, I can see the difference in you. And I was like, oh yeah, but you know, oh, it's just such a drag. Anyways, I had those three things. And also my dad wanted me to open a yoga studio, and he wanted me to kind of go in a kind of career direction that wasn't really my vibe. And I was like, no. And he kept pushing me to continue with a therapist. And anyways, I had those three things. And one day the therapist said to me, how is your frustration with your knee helping you? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a different question. So I rolled up my sleeves and I was like, okay, we've hit the nail on the head with that question, because the frustration is helping me to basically kick back at my father and be like, yo, butt out of my life. I'm going to make the decisions about my life. Thank you very much. I'm going to fire the therapist. And I was like, within the session with the therapist, I was like, mate, you're fired. Oh, how a question can backfire, hey?
But it would have been perfect for him as well, for whatever reason that we know.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I texted my dad while I was there saying, yo, I'm firing the therapist. And I decided in that moment it was time to rehome the dog. And I'd like had real like tug of war between myself about what to do about the dog. I was like, I kind of feel like he would be happier without me in a different home. I'd probably be happier without him. So, but it was still like a very, very difficult decision. And I was like, in that moment, because that question, it's time. Like, it's time to just make these changes in my life. And then probably like a week after I rehomed the dog, which was about 2 weeks after that question, the pain went away. Not forever, but it went away. And my point about kind of weaving your amazing life, and I don't think I phrased it quite how you do, but anyway, you get the idea. As a result of pain, rather than in spite of it, is that my knee pain was trying to get me to empower myself. It was trying to kind of make me take the steps to do the stuff that I needed to do to create an amazing life for myself. And I mean, there were so many little kind of funny little nuances as well. And I noticed that my knee pain would get worse when I was feeling a bit resentful about how much I was teaching classes and yoga, because I had a sense that teaching so many classes was actually getting in the way of me doing my own movement practice that I love. And it was just therefore trying to get me to kind of recalibrate my schedule and do less of some stuff and more of other stuff. Basically to have like fewer of the classes that were like really like pulling teeth, like, you know, being like, hey guys, okay, so we're going to do this, you know, movement class. And then people just responding like really badly, people walking out, maybe not so much walking out the class. I could kind of deal with those people. I was like, I'm actually okay with that, you leave. But the ones that are just like, no one's enjoying themselves, including me. Like there were too many of those, and it was just like such an effort sometimes teaching classes. And I was like, why am I doing this to myself? And so my knee pain again was like, you don't have to do this, you know. I was like,
I love that so much. I love that so much, that instead of the pain being I hate you and I'm trying to ruin your life, which is definitely how I felt about pain in the past. Hence my insight into your knee from my ankle injury I had. It's whispering to you, like you said, you don't have to do this. You can have a better life.
Exactly. And sometimes it will start as a whisper. And if you don't hear or listen to that whisper or even know how to interpret it, because it's so difficult to know what that whisper is, what is it saying? And so then it will start to shout louder. or speak louder and then shout. And then it's like, what are you doing? Until you take action. And interestingly, I had another situation just last week, actually. At about 3:30 in the morning, I was woken up by a stabbing pain in my boob. And I was like, interesting. And I was like, cancer? Is that you? And then I was like, okay, well, if it is, then it's time to kind of start reprioritizing a few things, because I have felt a little frustrated that like I'm not allowing myself to do certain things in my life. So basically I have felt like on my quest for world domination, that it's not possible to achieve world domination and take time away. And so I didn't have any holidays. Like I used to go on lots of holidays, and I haven't for the last 7 or 8 years, because I've been on this journey, on this quest, right? But I really want to travel. I really want to see the world. I really want to like go and see beautiful, amazing places, like gorgeous forests, mountains, lakes, all that kind of stuff. I'm like desperate to go. And I don't allow myself to do it. And so this little pain in the boob situation it's basically, I was like, okay, what is it trying to say? And it was like, do fewer of the things that don't inspire you. And again, I feel a bit bad to say this, but like basically don't teach the classes that you don't enjoy.
No, I think that's amazing, because also if you're being a teacher showing up to classes that you absolutely enjoy, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I do have many, I say I've got many, I only teach 4 per week, but like there are distinctive classes that I look forward to. Like my Sunday morning class, I absolutely love it. And I get paid absolute peanuts for it, but I just love going there. And I've been teaching there for about 7 years. And I'm like, I love that one. And then there are others that I'm just a bit like, really? And it feels like really hard work. And I'm like, and so this, pain in the boob was like, just be authentic, let yourself, and that's what it's all about, being authentic, right? And living your authentic life and doing what's right for you. So yeah, just be you, be authentic, ditch the shit that doesn't work for you, and do more of the stuff that you love to do. So I was like, okay, thank you, pain and boob. I've message taken on board.
Beautiful. And I assume that the pain is gone now, or are you still implementing?
Oh yeah. No, it's gone. It was gone in like half an hour.
So good. I love this so much because it resonates so much in my practice and what I do, and it's gorgeous. I want to also tell people how you and I met, and I want to remind you how we met as well. So I had started training parkour, which if you don't know parkour, that's that one where you kind of run around walls and up walls and things like that.
Cool shit.
And what?
You do cool shit.
You do cool shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember showing up to an outdoor class somewhere in London, and you turned up with this giant handbag. And this is the first time I'd seen you, and you turned up to this outdoor class where we normally start running somewhere, and you had this huge handbag, and it was just hilarious. And you sort of looked like this beautiful, well manicured, you did sweet human being, basically. And then shortly after, in the class, you were knocking out like at least 10 full range pull-ups hanging off the edge of a building, and I was like, yeah, I like this chick. There's this beautiful kind of balance and like surprise about you, and I was just like, yeah, this is cool, I like it.
All right. I do not remember that at all, obviously.
Yeah.
Are you sure I did 10?
You did 10. I was counting because I was like, I managed like 3 or something, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then you like knocked out 10, and I was like, awesome. Yeah, it was very cool.
Thank you.
And yes, and then you mentioned that like I was staying at your house, and this was shortly before I left London, after I'd had an interesting encounter with a relatively new flatmate, which again was a pain point for me. She flipped over me moving some of her dirty dishes to one side of the bench. And I was like, I'm moving out. So I moved out the next day. But that was one of the things that led me to moving back to New Zealand. But I bumped into a yoga class that I'd never seen you at before. And I think I mentioned this to you. And then you said to me, at much surprise to yourself, you told me later, you said, oh, well, if you need a place to stay. And I was like, actually, I really do.
No, you were a godsend. It was like a match made in heaven.
Wasn't it? I loved staying with you. That was such a great time we had.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we talked about some of the mindset stuff. I know you were working with your therapist then at the time, much to your disgruntlement, but you were getting some great stuff out of it as well.
I was.
Yeah.
But can I say, yes. I took a break from him, and we're now back together.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Me and said therapist. And actually, I, having had that time away, I can appreciate him and the process much more. And now I look forward to the sessions. I'm like, I come with like a long list of issues to discuss. Not necessarily, but also he's like a business kind of coach too. So I have the two things side by side, and it's so much with business is mindset stuff, and so we kind of do that too. Anyway, that's all. Go on.
No, it's beautiful. Yeah. And so basically we did a lot of we would just pop out and do some parkour training, or I would go to one of your yoga classes or something. And so it both of us, it's a lot of the things that we really enjoy is that movement. And so when you have something like you said, your knee injury, it's going to be the way, especially for me, I had an adrenal fatigue thing, and and various other injuries, but it's the way our bodies know they're going to get our attentions, because they I don't know if you find this with your clients, as it tends to kind of hit something that's you're really going to notice. And so if you're I don't know, maybe if you're someone who does a desk job, it's going to be something probably like in the wrists, RSI or whatever it is, because then you're not going to be able to do that. So have you noticed these kind of things with the people that you work with around pain? It sort of hits them where it hurts.
Yeah, for sure. And so one woman actually that I've been working with recently, but it's funny. Yeah. So let's tell the story properly. Yeah. So this woman I was working with, she had a shoulder and arm injury that was kind of like a neurological thing. So she had weakness, as well as kind of like pins and needles and stuff. And it was kind of coming from her neck, and she does flying trapeze. And I also do flying trapeze. We kind of bonded over trapeze. And so, yes, absolutely. Like it does hit you where it hurts, or like hits you where you have something that's a high value thing in your life. Like for her, it was the trapeze. For me, it was parkour, to get your attention. But sometimes, and what I noticed with her also is that she has other interests, and her other interests involve like human connection and doing and learning languages. She's like 53, I think, and she's doing remote learning with Oxford University. She's studying French and Spanish, and I think history of art, or I don't know. She's doing degree courses where she's kind of I wouldn't say she's self-taught actually, because she's doing online lectures, but like she has a lot of work, like, essay kind of learning to do. So anyway, so she couldn't do flying trapeze, which meant that she had more time to put into the learning of the languages. And the reason that she likes to learn languages is so that she can communicate with more people, and connect with more people from different cultures. And during COVID, because of her shoulder, she wasn't able to do the flying trapeze, but then she was helping, kind of literally going door to door, knocking on people's doors to talk to them about the vaccine, to try and encourage people to take the vaccine. And so that enabled her to connect with people. And she was able to use the languages that she's been learning in these degree courses that she's had more time to do because she's been doing less trapeze. And so her injury enabled her to do another thing that she loves, where she was able to connect. And like, there was a moment where she was like, I can't remember exactly the question I said to her, but she was like, oh my God, yeah, like this helped me connect with people in a way that I would not have been able to do if I was still doing flying trapeze. And she's just like, you know, I could see, like, had this moment where she had kind of tears in her eyes, and she was just like, whoa. It was like quite, and I got goosebumps. Oh, I got goosebumps.
It's such a beautiful moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so absolutely, that's that thing. It's sort of, injuries can take away the thing you think you need in order to, I don't know, be worthy, or it's the thing you identify with, and then it kind of leads you into the thing that your heart really desires, right? Because that's what happened to her, because that maybe that's the top priority, that connection with other people with the languages.
Yes, and sometimes there's like a shift in priorities, and an injury or a pain can just sort of be the thing that kind of grabs your attention to lead you there, if you allow yourself to go there, which is quite difficult sometimes.
So I want to ask you now, because your background is in the kind of intricate medical, if you like, scientific, with the osteopathic studies as well. And so one of your posts on Instagram, you showed 2 x-rays, and one of the x-rays was of a spine that was really healthy looking, and one was of a spine that was not so great looking. And yet the one with the spine that was healthy was the one who was having the most amount of pain. And so I'm really interested to look into this from that perspective as well. Like, how is that possible?
How is that possible? It's that is something that is very difficult to get your head around. And I remember when I first learned that, I was like, huh? That doesn't make any sense at all. It was like my entire osteopathic education was just like gone out the window. And I was like, how? Anyway, so basically, there's been a lot more research in recent years that has found that around 50% of people who go in for an MRI of a sore back, for example, don't have any visual changes on the MRI. And 50% of people who have a scan who don't have any pain, so they might go in for, I don't know, a scan for a different thing, or sometimes they've just done an experiment just to test people with pain and without pain. Anyway, so people without pain, sometimes they do have a structural change, and sometimes they don't, and it's around about 50% each. So 50% of people do have structural changes, but they don't have any pain. So they might have a disc lesion or a ligament sprain, or what's called spondylolisthesis, or a spondylolysis, or a spondyloarthrosis, which is basically like joint inflammation or joint kind of arthritis in the spine, or other kind of changes. And those things, or disc, what's called degenerative disc disease, which is the most unhelpful name for something normal, right? Because it's basically just aging. Everyone apart, like over the age of about 60 has a reduced disc height in their discs, and it's so normal, like everybody has it, and that's why we shrink over time. Partly because our discs reduce in height and plumpness, and partly because sometimes we can have like a vertebral body fracture, so the bone can sort of collapse in on itself, but that is a little bit more rare. Anyway, so yeah, but disc degeneration is basically just like having wrinkles on the inside, and so is arthritis. It's just like having wrinkles on the inside. It's so common over a certain age, yet not everyone over a certain age has pain. So it's, you know, we have the parody of like, oh my God, the stiff, achy old person. But stiff and achy is not the same as like really bad pain. And pain doesn't increase as we age. It often levels off and kind of decreases after the age of retirement.
Why is that?
Oh, yeah.
After the age of retirement. Yeah. So are these people who hated their jobs or something?
Well, possibly. But yeah, so basically, yeah, pain tends to occur between the ages of 21 or 25, I think, I can't remember, and 60 or 65. And so, and it's the worst between 30 and 40, or oh shit, I can't really remember. But basically when the work pressure and the life pressure is at its highest. And if that's causation or correlation, I don't know. I think it's probably a bit of both. So yeah, like, you know, and you would expect that if spines or joints or whatever are getting worse, technically, as we get older, you would expect pain to increase as well, but it just doesn't. And it often levels off and kind of goes away when a lot of the life and work pressures are gone as well.
So this is awesome for me, listening to this, because so often, and I would say exactly what you deal with when you're working with your clients as well. But so often we look at our external world, the world that we can see, taste, feel, and touch, and we can say, I don't know, you might have a shitty partner or a shitty job or no money or crappy health. And we say, I feel this way because of that thing externally. But this actually just turns that whole thing upside down and says, hold on a second, the ones who should have the most amount of pain, so if we look at the external, even though it's inside, but anyway, situation, like the x-ray, we'll bring it outside, they don't at all. And they're in much less pain than they were 5-10 years ago or 20 years ago. And so I love this. It gets me so excited. It's like, here's like one of the proof that your external situation is not the thing that dictates how you feel inside.
I mean, 1,000%. And like, so much stuff is about our perceptions. And it can be so confusing because so much of the messaging around pain is like, and doctors also have this, like, you know, and as was I, right? Like, I'm no different from any other doctor. Like, I've just had a slightly new information taught to me. But most doctors are of the belief that pain equals damage. But new pain science says pain does not necessarily equal damage. Pain is such a multifactorial situation. Like, there are emotions that feed into pain, and there are so many factors like childhood trauma, adulthood trauma, like emotional stress. All these things feed into pain and how we perceive life. So our perceptions influence our biochemistry and our neurochemistry. So if we're kind of like, if we perceive a situation as like kind of bad, or we feel angry about it, we feel resentful about it, then we have more cortisol, adrenaline, maybe not adrenaline. Oh shit, I can't remember. Oh my God, I can't remember the specific chemicals now, which is really irritating. But anyway, so like the kind of like the pro-pain hormones increase, and your brain is on high alert. You're kind of the fear center in your brain, your amygdala, is more on high alert, and it's like ping, 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 ping. And pain is trying to protect you and keep you safe in response to what you might perceive as a threat, a threatening situation or a potentially harmful situation. And it's all about your perceptions, and it can be on a primal level, like a deep kind of basic kind of level, or it can be on a kind of more high level. So our perceptions influence our biochemistry and our neurochemistry, which can upregulate or downregulate pain. And so when we change our perceptions and how we feel about a particular subject or situation, then that changes our chemistry, our biochemistry, our neurotransmitters. And that's when pain can go down, which is why when you said to me, instead of sending your knee hate and being angry with it, send it some love, literally it changes the chemicals. The anger and the hatred I had towards my knee was just keeping the pain hormones and the pain neurotransmitters and the high alert situation in my brain, kept it going, and then changing the perception and kind of literally I sat and I don't know if you remember this, I was like rubbing my knee and then like kissing it and be like, thank you knee, I love you. And that changed the neurotransmitters and the hormones, and that helped, reduce the pain a bit. It was like, we have these self-regulating mechanisms within us that we can tap into. And in fact, all the painkillers that are available on the market, like morphine, heroin and morphine, same thing, codeine, we have those chemicals within us. And we have the ability to access them and create them and get them to circulate in our blood when we change our perceptions.
And it's so cool as well, because giving your knee love wasn't enough to heal it, because for me, that is like when I first started shifting my mindset many years ago, the first thing I tried was a positive thinking type of situation. Just look for a better feeling thought. And that kind of got me a little bit, just enough to show how I feel switches things, but it didn't get to the underlying cause. And so this was the same thing with your knee. It's like it showed you enough to say, okay, hold on a second, there's something going on here. But what your knee really wanted you to understand was that there was something in your life that you were missing, could be more joyful for you and could be less painful. And that there were those three things that you pointed out. And so it is such a great way for people who are kind of listening to this to kind of like, oh, just give it a shot. Start trying to be nicer to that part of your body. If you're not even buying into the fact, oh, there might be a message or your body might be talking to you, that's fine. Start off by something that's just really easy. Just be nice to it and see if that then gives a shift. And if it does, that might create this like little question in your mind, like, why did that make a shift? And then they might start from that place, be like able to ask themselves some questions.
Yeah.
So if you carry on, no, you go. And then
I was just going to say, so sometimes when that happens, that can help you. Sorry, the cat is about to jump on me. That can help you believe that you can get better. So having that little moment of reduced pain, if we choose to see it that way, that's like, okay, so I am able to have less pain as a result of whatever I've done. Who cares like what the cause was, but just like knowing that, yeah, like believing is so important. And when you do have that belief, then you can keep going with it. And that can help you to then take more action because you see the potential. And this is like a Tony Robbins thing, actually. So, and I can't remember exactly, but there are 4 things. So belief is one of them. And then you have the belief. So then you see the potential. And then when you see the potential, you're more likely to take action. And when you take action, you then get results. And when you get the results, your belief goes up and your potential then increases. And then you want to take more action because you're then more encouraged and inspired by the results that you've had. And then it becomes like a positive loop. And then you just keep going. You keep putting in the effort until you keep getting more effort, more belief, more results. And then who knows?
Who knows? Your potential is endless. So this is really exciting. I'm just like, where was I going next? I suppose a question that some people might be wondering is, so pain is there obviously as a warning. And so I think what you're saying is basically that system has gone into overdrive and it's kind of like overwarning you. So then if, say, somebody who has a less great looking spine, like the person on that x-ray, are they putting themselves at any risk by not having that pain there anymore? Because I wonder if that's what people are going to question, like, oh, if I don't have the pain anymore, am I now with this, let's call it a compromised spine, which you may think of it like that, should I then stop doing the flying trapeze or the parkour or the whatever? Or is this really then putting you back into that, when you're safe category because you're not receiving pain? So I just was wondering if that's something that people might be thinking about.
That is a really good question. And I think that is something, especially if somebody has had imaging in the past and they see their spine, it's so common for them to have this belief of, oh my God. And that, like, one of my stepmom's friends actually had, I think, degenerative disc disease, and had cortisol injections, but also retired from his very stressful law career. And the pain managed to somehow go away around the time that he retired. But then he's convinced, and he runs regularly. Okay. So he goes for long runs. I think he's about 60 right now. And he's like, yeah, my back could go at any minute. So he has the belief that his spine is vulnerable, that his spine is in a precarious kind of situation, that he has to take a lot of care of it. He can't do certain things because he has to protect it, which is not necessarily true. That's quite a kind of disempowered way of thinking about stuff, right? Because you're like constantly in fear. And sometimes that can become like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're like, oh my God, this thing could cause me to do that. Oh shit, I'm trying so hard to avoid it. Whoops, it happened. So yes, it is very common to have a belief that something could go wrong, that you could have an increased pain situation. And that can happen. And the reason that that can happen is that because you're on high alert for pain anyway, because it's like a sensitive part of your body, and your brain and your nervous system have a memory for whatever's happened before and for pain, and it wants to protect that sensitive area. If something were to trigger, it's not so much that you would be doing damage necessarily. It depends on what the situation is, but most of the time it's not that you're going to be doing damage. It's just that you'll activate some kind of memory that your brain suddenly is like, oh, must protect. Pain.
Right. So you could be receiving pain even though there's no damage, and it could be new pain, but it's almost like your brain is fulfilling your fear by saying, yes, you do need to be careful. It's kind of almost like confirming that fear for you. It's like, yes, you knew that this could be a problem. So yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Very much so. And yeah, so and that's not necessarily the case, but when we do have a pain flare up, it is sensible just to kind of like back off a little bit from whatever you were doing before and to change something, because your brain is going to keep generating a pain signal, because that's what it wants you to do. Because otherwise, if you say, for example, and there is a physiotherapist who, very interesting, like 3 days ago, he was doing deadlifts in the gym, and he does them all the time. But then something happened the other day, and he had like really bad back pain. He had to stop doing he had to stop his training. And he's been reporting his recovery, his thank you. Yeah, since 3 days ago. And his pain is really bad. Like, it's waking him up at night. And he kind of like can't sit he can only sit slouched. I think that's it, the only like comfortable seated position that he can have. And walking is kind of painful, but he knows from the research that he's done that he needs to walk a bit, but not too much. Why am I saying this?
We were talking about pain signals coming in.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not so much that he's going to be doing himself more damage by being active, but his back is already pissed off. So if he were to go back to the gym and start doing deadlifts, he probably wouldn't be able to, because his brain would just not let his body do that, because it's trying to protect something that's sensitive, that might be damaged, that needs time to heal. And so again, I've lost my line of thinking, which is really unhelpful.
Well, it's just really like, is there, because we're saying that that pain signal can come in, and sometimes it's like relevant and sometimes it's not, right? So
yes, and in a fresh injury, it is very useful to listen to it. but not bed rest. Even though that can be the temptation. I don't think that's, the old kind of way of dealing with pain. But yeah, so if you do have a pain flare up, so it's usually not damage that's caused it. It's usually some sort of memory that has been triggered, and it's again maybe trying to get your attention. It might just be, and usually it is, like sometimes, like if you've been making good progress in your life to kind of live your kind of best life and kind of do meaningful stuff, then you're less likely to have that. But then if something happens that you're not completely congruent with what is truly meaningful for you, then you're more likely to have a pain flare up. It's not like a hard and fast rule per se, but it's potentially something to consider, especially with recurring situations, recurring pain. Like, what is it? Why, and if you also can like think about, okay, well, what is going on at the time that this is happening? Like, is there a pattern? Like, why does this keep happening? What's going on in my life at the time that this happens? What, how am I feeling about work? How am I feeling about relationships? How am I feeling about blah, 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 stuff? And use that as a guide, and then just kind of use the clues.
For you then, is pain ever just a pain incident, or is there always a deeper message?
No, I think there can be situations where it is just like you stubbed your toe or you sprained your ankle. I mean, sometimes, an ankle sprain can occur if you're not paying attention or whatever, that kind of thing, or if you're kind of showing off. And maybe there is a lesson there, but not all the time. I think, sometimes we can kind of look for stuff in an acute injury where we don't necessarily need to. But if it's an ongoing thing, it probably is useful to have a little question and be like, oh, really? Why does this keep happening? Because if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same result.
That old chestnut.
Yeah.
So for me, it really sounds like this, and what you are guiding your clients through is helping them connect more deeply to their intuitive senses, that their body is kind of trying to speak to them. And so it feels like kind of what you're saying is like we're intuitive beings, and we actually have a lot more information available to us than what we realize. And this is one way that you can tune in. Like I think about some people who maybe they're just about to go on a massive hike and it's the biggest hike they've ever done, or they're about to go away on holiday and they're scared of flying or something, and all of a sudden that's when their migraine flares up, or that's when their back pain flares up or something. And so we have this amazing power to protect ourselves when we're deeply afraid of something. So it really sounds like this is a deep kind of fear clearing, and an opportunity to connect more deeply with yourself. Is that what you're kind of ultimately saying?
Yeah. Yes, summarized beautifully.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, although it's not always a fear. Sometimes it's just you're expecting yourself to do something that is just not that meaningful for you. And I like to use the word meaningful rather than joyful necessarily, because where something is meaningful for us, we will go and seek the challenges in that area, right? So, and we'll kind of look for problems because it's fun, right? Like problem solving in an area that we really care about is fun. Whereas if it's an area that we're just not that inspired by, it's going to be like, and a drag or a pain in the ass, which, literal or metaphorical. Yeah. So I like to use the term meaningful, but just because, I mean,
No, I love that. I love that
Yeah.
so much. And I think that's an incredibly valid and important point that you're bringing up, because it is so true. And I've talked about the kind of joyful thing in the past. Like for me, it's either it feels right or it's joyful. And so, and for me, you saying if it's meaningful kind of brings that together really. Because it's like sometimes it feels right to do, but it's not necessarily in your highest joy to do it. And yeah, so that's a really, I like that way of saying it. Is it meaningful for you? That is, that is beautiful, because if we, exactly right, if we're feeling challenged by something that's meaningful, it's great. Go. Yeah.
I was just going to refer back to the lady with the shoulder and the flying trapeze, because not being able to do flying trapeze and then having that time to go and knock on people's doors, that was a meaningful exercise for her, but not necessarily joyful, because so many times she would, a bit like Jehovah's Witnesses, like the person would open the door and she'd be like, hey, can I talk to you about vaccines? And then she'd have the door slammed in her face, which wouldn't have been a joyful experience. But because it's meaningful for her, because she cares about that so much, she didn't mind. And the conversations where the people were interested, even if they were skeptical, it was still like a meaningful thing for her rather than a joyful thing, because it gave her the opportunity to hear about them, what their concerns were, and if she could then kind of allay their concerns or whatever. So it was right, exactly. So she's connecting, as you just said, and that is meaningful more so than joyful.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
her. That's just an example.
Yeah, and this is what we're really looking for in our lives, right? We don't want to be in a constant state of joy necessarily, of like la 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 skipping around. But if we're feeling like, what we're doing is really meaningful and purposeful, and then it's fulfilling, and we feel filled up. So
exactly.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. So where do people begin? So let's say I'm someone who's got chronic shoulder pain or something. Pick up shoulders. That's been one of my things in the past that I've dealt with through a very similar way. Where would I start if I've had this shoulder pain for months or years even? Like what's something that I can that we can give to someone listening to this now who's like, okay, this all sounds great. First up, the first thing to pick up on, and I know that you have mentioned this in some of your posts, and I think it's a really important thing to bring up, it's not all in people's heads, is it?
Well, it's not in their heads in the sense that they perceive that, or they're not making it up, no, or it's not imagined. It's definitely real. The pain is real. It's a real experience. It's a real thing. But the cause of the pain might just not be the thing that we think it is. That's, I think, the difference between, the two ideas, right? So, yes, the pain is real, and where someone could start, I think there are two places. One of them is, if my pain had a voice, what would it be trying to tell me? That's one question. Another question is, or not even so much of a question, but kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about like, okay, so is there a pattern? What is going on? What am I doing at the time that the pain comes? Where am I? What action am I doing? Is there a particular, is it literally if I'm lifting my arm? Or so is it a specific action? Is it a specific place or time of day? Look for the patterns, basically. If sometimes they aren't any, sometimes it's just like it can be so random. And you're like, oh my God, but why? And it can be incredibly frustrating. And then, but when you do look at specific moments when the pain comes, and if you think, okay, and this is a very difficult question to do and kind of exercise to do by yourself, but hey ho, you can. Otherwise, come to me and I'll help you. Is to ask yourself, how is this pain helping me? And what are the blessings? What is it trying to teach me? And you kind of start to look at it in a slightly different way, rather than thinking, oh my God, this is purely bad, 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 bad. If you start to look at it and for the blessings and the benefits of the pain, even though at the time it can feel like there are absolutely none. And I was that person too. I was like, it's just not possible. No way. But then you really look and you're like, wow, you can start to kind of unpick it a little bit. And then you can start to see other kind of patterns, which emerge, and you're like, it's quite mind-blowing actually, how you're like, whoa, okay, so I'd never realized that, like, that this was a trigger for me, or that this was an issue for me, until you really kind of notice it through your pain, or through, even if it's not pain, it can be like a symptom of a, I don't know, IBS or some sort of low grade kind of illness type situation. So if you really kind of look at the symptoms and take one situation at a time, if you can't find a pattern, and think, okay, well, in that moment, what was going on? Who was there? What was I feeling? Is there anything that I wanted to say to a person at the time that I didn't say? And just, you know, and because that is why it's like, it's trying to hold you authentic, hold you accountable to be authentic. And so sometimes we avoid saying stuff because we don't want to upset someone, we don't want to rock a boat, whatever. But then we'll get like a kick up the arse from the pain that's like, no, you have to speak your truth. And sometimes that can be a pattern too. You know, there are people I've worked with as well who, you know, they just are holding in either their emotions, they don't want to kind of like be frank about how they're feeling, or they're just not saying no to something, or they're not saying, I want this. So when you give yourself permission to do that and kind of go through the process, then it's like, whoa, crazy. And then you're like, wow. And then you can start to make the necessary changes.
I love that.
And use it as a, yes.
It could be where you're going to you could be going to a particular class because you think you need that kind of next level of education, or all of those kind of things. So I think that's so important, and that's a really beautiful thing that people can start doing straight away. You can even, you know, record it down on your phone or anything like that. Just notice, okay, pain was a number 10 or above a 7 or something at these times, and just looking back over them, and over a week or a month you're going to learn so much about that. And then if people are really getting stuck and they find, or maybe they've had a little bit of success, or they've noticed something, just like with the be nice to your knee thing, and they're kind of ready for some more assistance, then what ways can you offer them that assistance? How can they find you?
Oh, me personally. All right. Okay. So I do one-to-one sessions with people. And I also do group programs as well, where I provide very kind of relevant information and I ask the questions, and then people kind of work through them themselves. I do help people as well. It's not just like, here's a question, off you go. It is a little bit of that. And then people get, sometimes, I mean, it's normal to get stuck. It's normal to be like, I don't know. And so I'll help and I'll prompt and I'll be like, okay, so I'll ask just different questions basically. And also link it to what is most important to them. That's a very kind of key thing. So people can come onto my group programs or my one-to-one sessions. I think I'm doing one maybe in the UK autumn.
And if people are in New Zealand, can they, because this is both New Zealand and worldwide, this podcast.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure people don't forget about New Zealand. Down the bottom
it's
here.
a beautiful country. I'm actually super keen to kind of come visit.
You must. That would be so much fun. So if people are in a different country than the UK, and it's a little bit more difficult to travel at this point in time, do you work online? Do you have online courses?
Yes, so it is all online. I do actually have a self-led back pain course, which is available via my website right now, where I explain a lot about how pain works. And there are physical exercises. There are also the mental exercises that I take people through in my one-to-one sessions and my kind of bigger programs. You can opt to have one-to-one sessions on top of the videos and the things that are recorded in that course. So that one is more specifically aimed at low back pain.
Mm-hmm.
And but it can be used for kind of other types of pain. The physical exercises are more for back pain, but the mental exercises can be used for any kind of pain.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's that, which is ready to go. There are one-to-one online sessions. The programs with the group programs are also online, so like, it's not geographical discrimination.
Awesome. And how do people find you, Amy?
My website is www.amyslevin.com, AMYSLEVIN. I'm also on Instagram and YouTube. My Instagram is _Amy Slevin. And my YouTube is, I think, just Amy Slevin. As simple as that.
Awesome. So
And I also have my own podcast called Get a Move On.
I didn't even know that. That's so cool.
Oh, well, I've obviously done a really good job of publicizing it.
Get a move on. Okay. Oh, wow. That's really cool. Okay. Exciting. Well, thank you so much for everything today. It's just been awesome. And maybe we'll do more chats in the future.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you. This has been really cool and fun and meaningful and joyful and all of those things.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.